Yo, what is going on, guys? SMH Super Mario Hoops back with some more hoops, and as you might have noticed, we are hopping right back into our top 50 list. And today we got a nice little player here that a lot of people, I don't know if they really talk about him quite as much as they used to, and his name is Kevin McHale, as you can see in the title and thumbnail. Now, Kevin McHale, where do I have him on my list is probably the big question of the day. That's why you guys are all watching, and because, you love me so much. But we're going to rank Kevin McHale on my all-time list at number 49. Now, we're going to jump right into Kevin McHale. But before this video starts, need you guys to hit that like button, need you guys to subscribe, and hit that notification bell. I know you guys have that notification bell turned off, and you need to turn that on right now so you'll see the rest of my list. Believe me, I got 50 videos I'm pumping out right now for you guys. You guys better hit that notification bell. That's all I'm asking. But anyways, let's go back into talking about Kevin McHale and why I have him ranked 49th, and let's just talk about him. So starting off with Kevin McHale and his achievements, he is a 7-time NBA Allstar from 1984, and along with that, 1986 until 1991. Over this course of time, he only made one All-NBA team, which might be a little bit surprising, but he made All-NBA first team in 1987. And he was also a 6-time All-Defensive player, which might also be a little surprising if you guys aren't too familiar with him. He made first team All-Defensive for 3 years from 1986 until 1988, and made 3-time All-Defensive second team from 1983 to 1989 and 1990. Another thing that goes a little under the radar about Kevin McHale is that he's actually a 2-time Sixth Man of the Year in both the 1984 and 1985 years. He was 55.4% from the field over the course of his career, which actually ranks him 22nd all-time and the 3rd highest at his position all-time behind Amir Johnson and Bo Outlaw, both in which were not all-star caliber players or all-NBA caliber players, just like Kevin McHale. So in terms of Hall of Fame level power forwards, he basically ranked first in terms of field goal percentage. He is 55.5% in terms of effective field goal percentage, which is 31st all-time and the 4th highest at his position, behind the same guys, Amir Johnson and Bo Outlaw, and also Charles Barkley. In terms of his true shooting percentage, he ranks 60.5% true shooting, which is 21st all-time, and now is 2nd highest at his position all-time, once again behind Charles Barkley. But from 1984 to 1990, he had 6 consecutive seasons of being in the top 10 for true shooting percentage in the NBA, which not a lot of players can say that. From 1986 to 1988 was consecutive years in which he was top 3 in true shooting percentage in the NBA for 3 straight years. Another thing, let's get more into his defense. Now, let's talk about all defensive teams. As I mentioned, Kevin McHale has made 6 all-defensive teams in his career, which is 3 first teams and 3 second teams. Now, I'm going to list a few players for you guys. Karl Malone, Dirk Nowitzki, Charles Barkley, and Elvin Hayes. As you might have guessed, all these guys are going to be somewhere on this list. And all these guys are also power forwards. But what if I told you that all 4 of them combined have the same amount of all-defensive teams on both first team and second team than Kevin McHale alone? And that's crazy, because Malone, Dirk, and Charles Barkley, I think a lot of them would say that they're all top 5 power forwards all time. Maybe Elvin Hayes isn't quite up to par with those dudes, but he's still probably a top 50 player all time himself. Yet all those guys have combined for just as many defensive accolades and defensive accomplishments as Kevin McHale did by himself. Also, consider that he was more frequently on the all-defensive teams than Bird, and he would generally draw the tougher assignment of the best wing player or forward on the other team. This could be guys like Dominique Wilkins, Sidney Moncrief, Alex English, and so on. But let's get more into his peak season, because this might be one of the most untalked about seasons in NBA history. From 1986 to 1987, he finished top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year, which was the highest voted Boston Celtic. He averaged 26.1 points per game, which was 6th in the NBA that year, 9.9 rebounds a game, essentially 10 per game, 2.6 assists per game, 2.2 blocks per game, which ranked him 7th that year, shot 60.4% from the field, which led the NBA, 65.5% true shooting, which, as we mentioned earlier, that was 3rd in the league, and a 24.0 PER, which was top 5 that season. To put into perspective for a more recent days comparison, if you weren't around to follow Kevin McHale, you're not too familiar with him, Let's imagine a player with the offensive versatility and rebounding capabilities of 2013-2014 Kevin Love, which was his last year with Minnesota, and that's when he averaged about 26 and 14 a game. Except doing so on better than Steph Curry's average efficiency and a typical Kevin Garnett type of defensive season. Putting all that together in 1 year, that's essentially what Kevin McHale was doing for that whole season's worth. In this year, he had a career-high 14.8 win shares, and this is one of 7 seasons where McHale had more than 10 for a full season. Now, for his career, he had 0.331 MVP shares, which is 91st all-time. Of course, you got to consider he played with a lot of good players. He played with a really good team. Of course, Larry Bird is the most notable player that he played alongside that was really good. Robert Parrish shouldn't go unnoted. Same thing with Dennis Johnson and those guys. In his peak, his similarity scores are higher than players that were compared to him, such as Rick Barry and Dominique Wilkins. Now, Kevin McHale, for the most part, was a relatively good playoff performer, but he had a rough start early on with his different role. He never cracked higher than 25 points for a playoff game until his 5th postseason, which some of it is due to his role, but not all of it, as we know. He had some dumpster fire series against the Rockets in the 1981 finals, the Bucks in the 1983 second round, where he was abysmal from the free throw line, and the 1984 NBA finals, where he arguably wasn't even a top 5 Celtic in that series and was letting James Worthy toy with him. However, following that finals, he began to thrive instead of disappoint. Now, he wasn't an All-Star the next season, and he was actually in 84, but he would average over 20 points per game in 16 of the next 22 playoff series in his career, after never doing so across the first 4 years and 11 series. In these series, McHale shot over 50% from the field in 20 of 22 series and over 70% from the free throw line in all 22 series. And by 1985, McHale kind of changed this narrative of not a top 5 Celtic in the finals the previous year to the best Celtic and arguably the best player in the series. Note that this was against the Lakers too, the Showtime Lakers, who had Magic, they had Kareem, they had Worthy, Byron Scott, Bob McAdoo, Michael Cooper, and so on. And McHale still averaged 26 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks on 59.8 shooting from the field and 64.4% true shooting, along with a 120 to 113 net rating and a 20.7 game score to lead the Celtics. In Game 6, McHale had a game high for both points and rebounds with 32 points and 16 rebounds respectively on 11 of 18 shooting from the field. Larry Bird had 28 points himself on 12 of 29 shooting, which wasn't really terrible, but that's not typical for Larry Bird standards. As for Dennis Johnson, Robert Parrish, and Danny Ainge, they combined to shoot 11 for 45 that game in an 11-point loss. This would have been a year where I think Kevin McHale definitely would have took home the finals MVP in a different outcome. And he actually was close in the next season as well, when Boston won the 1986 championship. McHale led the Celtics to 25.8 points per game, 2.5 blocks per game, and shot 57.3% from the field. But while he was a more efficient scorer than Bird, Larry dropped nearly 24, 10, and 10 per game that series on nice perimeter shooting, including a 29-point, 12 assists, 11 rebound, 3 steal on 65.1% true shooting closeout game to win the NBA championship. Kevin McHale still played pretty solid in that game, though, because he did have 29 points and 10 rebounds. So let's kind of dive into Kevin McHale now more. Is he overrated or is he underrated? I think considering the fact that a lot of people don't really talk about him as much anymore, I'd have to say he's underrated. I mean, like I said, nowadays people only give credit to the main stars of these older teams unless they have a big draw to the game today in some impactful way. Like how LeBron fans try to say that Scottie carried Michael in some sense. And that's not true, but that's what people do. But they've also done this with Kareem, with Bill Russell, with Hakeem, and in this case, with Larry Bird. And Larry Bird was great, and more than not, he was the best player on the Boston Celtics. Obviously not in some of those series that we just went over. But as we displayed in some big moments, Kevin McHale was that guy. He was an elite scorer with great defense, insane footwork. I mean, how can he not be in the top 50? He's a proven winner as well for several seasons, and he's extremely unselfish as well, being able to put himself as a bench player in that role, as the sixth man, as a starter, as an all-star. I mean, Kevin McHale at 49 is anything but overrated. And you could call him a plumber all you want, but this plumber would give you bruises physically and mentally. So with all that being said, I think this is where I'm going to close out the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell like I mentioned at the very beginning. I'm watching you. But without further ado, I'm going to end the video. So thank you guys for watching. Stay tuned for more. There's a lot more to come, believe me. And I'm out. Peace.